Alex,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Cool. It works.
Sweet, sweet. Thank you again for doing this. It's really,
Yeah,
really
of
cool
course.
to meet you.
And it's really meta that, we're having some difficulties recording.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Two audio guys just killing it over here.
Yeah.
Sweet. Forgive my my podcast noobishness, but
Oh, that's okay. I've only done a couple and not ever about this, only about guitar amps, so
gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, I figure I just kind of start by asking, like what your background in music was, if you grew up with it, at what age did you get into it, or stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I can't remember what age I first started playing guitar. Pretty young, and I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I went to a music camp and stuff, and then I got really into hip hop and stuff from a friend's older brother, and until I was about during that time is actually when I think I first started recording, because around that time digital 4-tracks and things like that were becoming pretty common and cheap. I kind of missed, they were around, but I kind of missed the age a little bit of, I did have like a Tascam recorder too, but
what year was that around?
that would have been like 1997
Okay.
probably. Or 1998 probably. I was like 13 or 12 or 13. And then I got back into guitar for some reason. I literally pulled it out from under the bed, and then I think it was because I was watching skate videos and I heard different kinds of rock music that I hadn't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled out the guitar, and then I went to the music camp thing's relevant because I went back to the music camp where I met for the first time this guy named Buster, who we ended up playing music together, and I was like 13 at the time, and that's when we started our band Kidcrash. So
Wow, you guys were 13.
yeah, he was like 14 and I was 13, and I was just going into my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
So we met that long ago, and then
So that was like early 2000s?
it was like 1999.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 1999, and it's sounding really long ago now. But so that's like the really short version of it, and he showed me some bands, and I showed him some bands, and just honestly, it was really like stuff I had heard on skate videos. I was like really got into emo for the first time because I heard Promise Ring song on this Italian skater's 411 video. It was like a video magazine. I don't know if you ever skateboarded, but
No.
there's a thing called 411. It was like a video magazine. It came out, I don't know if it came out monthly, but the skaters would pick their own music, and there was like a really wide variety of music on there. And I've actually met a lot of people that discovered like a lot of music through skate videos at that time because it wasn't pre-internet, but it was like, where you could easily find out about music on the internet. And
Yeah, for sure.
and so
Was there like a particular like punk band that you saw in like a music video or something or you heard in a music video that kind of stuck with you? Like you mentioned the Promise Ring, like any other bands?
I think it was just that, and then I think it was really them, and then I had been exposed to some pop punk stuff, just because pop punk is kind of juvenile music, so younger people like pop punk, and
Yeah.
so that's a kind of early kind of punk you get into because it's more accessible. It's like it's poppier, obviously. It's called pop punk, so. So I liked like Blink-182, and I remember this band. Oh God, I can't even remember the names. Oh, MXPX, and they're from Washington, where I ended up moving. But just like stuff like that. But I was really, really into the Promise Ring. And then Buster showed me some bands like Millencolin. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're kind of like a little more highbrow pop punk compared to MXPX or something. And he liked stuff more like that. And we just started finding out bands together in our local scene in Santa Fe. We started going to shows. So I was going to say it was more local bands. There was this local band called Pint Size that was really good. That was kind of like, and I guess I would call them like emo or something. I don't know. I don't even know what genre they'd technically be or what they would be compared to, but they were an emotive rock band. They were more on like the Alkaline Trio side of things, you know.
Okay.
They were like, they weren't quite, they had some pop punk elements, but they had some, or like Jawbreaker or something like that. They were more like in that realm.
Yeah. Where all those punk bands were making the transition to like the softer, more emotional.
Yeah, totally. And so, we were just we were going to every show we could at our local teen center, and which we were really lucky to have, and that's kind of how we got into like playing music and stuff and DIY at a very young age.
Was Buster like a drummer from the start?
Yeah, he had already been playing drums, and he had been going to the same music camp, but we had never gone the same time, so we never met each other until that year, because I had been going to this camp since I was like 8, and so had he.
Was that like a summer thing?
Yeah, it was. It's in it's still around. It's called Hummingbird Music Camp, and it's in Jemez Springs, New Mexico, up in the mountains.
Was that like a sleepaway camp?
Yes, it's a sleepaway camp. So
nice.
Band camp.
Yeah.
But you could play guitar if you wanted, or drums, I guess. Yeah.
That's sweet. Yeah, I went to a summer camp for like 5 years, like a sleepaway camp.
Oh yeah, so you get it. Very, very formative times. But yeah, and you make some friends there, hopefully. So I met Buster. So
that's cool. And did y'all end up like kind of living close-ish to each other?
Yeah, actually we did. Yeah, we did live pretty close. But Santa Fe is a pretty small town, so it's easy to get around too. So, I mean, yeah. So we just started playing music, and then we were looking for other people to join our band. It was just 2 of us, and then we.
Did you have any like early iterations of the name, or was it?
Yes. No, we did. And so the first show we ever played was with a different bass player, Jasper. He was a bit older than us, but our name was our first show we ever played was on the radio.
Oh, cool.
And there's got to be a recording of it somewhere. But we were called the Encyclopedia Brown.
Nice.
And then we didn't like that name, so we were playing our first show and we didn't have a name, and we were practicing at the teen center before our show. I mean, we're just kids, you know, and we're like really nervous. We're practicing at the venue, and then we.
You're the 3-piece at this point?
Fuck, I'm trying to remember who. No, there was a gap in between, so we had gotten the lineup together. This was our first show with our lineup that never changed for the rest of the band.
Right on.
We had recruited. I won't tell you the whole story of all of them joining, but that we had recruited John on guitar and Kevin on bass.
Did you know them previously, or?
Buster knew Kevin. They were friends, and Kevin didn't actually play an instrument, but we liked him, so we're like, you can play bass, that's easy. So he learned how to play bass in the band.
That's awesome.
And like as soon as we quit, he stopped the band. He stopped playing bass. Like
really,
it was
okay.
Just only for the band. He never played in other bands or anything.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah, he's a great bassist and has great rhythm and musicality, but if Kevin listens to this, he'll agree he could barely tune his own bass. So,
love it.
Yeah, and so and then John was, I think maybe Kevin knew John a little. They were a couple years older than me, and John had been in a band with his brother, but he couldn't even play guitar standing up. he had to sit down because he couldn't figure out how to play it standing up yet. I mean, that's how bad we were. But yeah, I actually have a talking about recording. I have a recording that his brother archived for us. Basically, I had recorded it on a Sony boombox that I had gotten as a kid for Christmas. Me and my sister got matching ones, and so it was on a cassette, and he put it on a CD of our first band practice before Kevin was in the band on bass. So it was just me, John, and Buster, and I have that, and it's like our first or second band practice together, and we have kind of like 3 songs cobbled together.
Oh wow! Are you on vocal?
No vocals yet. Just
no vocals.
Yeah, just like us kind of. It's not just jamming because we actually have like some kind of like arrangements of the songs, but I can't believe that recording exists and I have it, and it doesn't sound that bad. I'll also have to send it to you.
That's really cool. Yeah, shoot it over. That'd be pretty cool to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. So you guys assemble the band, and then it's just you four. You're a unit, and then
yeah, we had a couple little band. We had one band name for our first show, which was Sometimes Sleeping, which our friend Molly let us use for the show because she was there when we were practicing and before the show. And then John used to write band names on his hand in school, and then, we'd go to band practice, and he'd say, how about this, and he said Kidcrash, and I really didn't like it, but the other guys were like, that's cool. And I was like, I don't know, I don't like it. It's not like emo enough. It sounds like, I don't know, it sounds wrong. And then this is really embarrassing, but I wanted to call it Kidcrash because that was like my compromise, because I was like, oh, that sounds more emo, and it's kind of like the other name. But then when the time came for us to make a flyer for the show, they still won't tell me the truth, but I think it was a conspiracy against me because whoever made the flyer, who organized the show, they must have told them Kidcrash. So on the flyer was Kidcrash, and we just stuck with it. So.
Oh man, yeah, you're outvoted.
That's the real story. So we had this stupid band name, our whole band, but
it's honestly one of my favorite band names. It's very original.
Thanks. But it's just like a regular name, once you get used to it, you kind of stop thinking about it.
For sure.
And it's just so closely associated with the music that you don't like. A lot of think about like the Beatles. That's such a stupid band name.
Yeah.
It's like a pun about like beating a drum, but it's like a bug. But like, who thinks about that when they think about Revolver or something? They just... Yeah,
it kind of transcends like the actual makeup of the word, and it's just like, it's that band. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about the band. I've come to peace with it.
Good. Yeah, it's a good name.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Were you guys... the Kidcrash? I know it on Spotify, at least for that first record. It's under the Kidcrash.
Yeah.
Was that like...
So that was that's funny because that was kind of a sad attempt of us like trying to make it cooler.
Yeah.
We got rid of the and we made it one word. But so now in retros, and that's how it was for actually most of the band, but now in retrospect, we kind of separate like kind of 2 different eras of the band with that as like the demarcation.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes sense because I read up about some of the... I mean, first, like, sound-wise, it's a bit of a...
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different thing, but...
I was going to say, there is, like, a Missing Link EP that's not on Spotify, I'm pretty sure. That's kind of the connection between the high school sound and the college sound, I guess you could say.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's called... I Haven't Had a Date in 4 years. Goldie Hawn.
Yeah, that's on Spotify, actually.
Oh, it is? Okay, because that was the one where that kind of makes sense of the transition for us because we started listening to different music, basically. So.
Yeah, I definitely heard that in that EP. It's kind of like a mesh between the two, for sure. Yeah, I guess let's start. You guys started with New Ruins, right, with the record?
Okay, what's crazy is we probably have like 50 songs or more recorded before that.
Wow.
And we have, because it was just all we did when we were kids, you know. So we had like one EP that we had recorded with a friend, Alex Rose, who ended up playing, he was in Minus the Bear for a really long time, if you know that band.
Cool. Yeah.
But he's from New Mexico, and he was a recordist. And so we recorded with him like an EP, and then we have just like a bunch of random stuff. Our friend Jacob had a good recording setup at his house because that was like our earliest stuff. He had good equipment, but he didn't know how to use it. His dad is a famous electronic musician named Martin Subotnick. He's kind of accredited with like inventing electronic music to a certain degree. He's old. He's older, and he worked with Buchla on the first synthesizers and stuff.
Oh wow.
And it's crazy, yeah. So he had all this stuff that we used to like record our shitty music. You know, it was hilarious. But he probably,
awesome.
I cannot imagine what he thought of what we were doing. He was already older at that point too. He was probably fucking grinding his teeth.
Was he doing his stuff in like the 80s?
Earlier, I think as early as like the 60s maybe. This is like really primitive electronic music too, like really early. I haven't read up on it because it was only later when I was like, oh shit, that was his dad. Oh my god,
Right.
That was just Jacob's dad. But
that's interesting. I'll have to check that out.
yeah, his mother too is a famous opera singer and experimental singer, Joan LaBarbera, and I think too she was famous for doing this. Like in the movie Alien, when the alien pops out of Sigourney Weaver, like she did the sound for that.
Oh wow, like the sound design or something.
But when you go like the Scream or whatever. But when you go to when you grow up in Santa Fe, you meet lots of weird people like that. They just kind of end up there. So we would record at his house, and we didn't know how to record properly, and there would be like weird phase issues, and there was also a period too. I don't know if you came across this ever, but do you know the musician who goes under the name Beirut?
I've heard of the name. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, he's like a indie pop like singer, really popular. He was my best childhood friend, and we had started recording together like our hip hop stuff, and his brother showed us tons of music. But he was actually in Kidcrash for a little bit, and we have an album that he's on and he sings on with me.
Oh wow.
Called A Fire in the Museum. You could probably find that somewhere on YouTube. But then we were trying to really sound like Cursive at that time. Yeah, we have just a ton of stuff, and I used to record us a lot too.
Okay.
So
for the real quick for the hip hop stuff, were you like rapping or just making beats?
So I was really into. We didn't really have the gear to like make beats from scratch exactly. We had, but I had turntables, and I was like into scratching and like doing DJ stuff.
Cool.
And even at like 14, it's funny because there was a crossover period where I was like into like really obscure underground hip hop, and I had like a very, I would say, refined taste because of my friend Zach, the Beirut guy's older brother. But I then at the same time was listening to like Blink-182.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
It's quite the spectrum there.
It's really but I have one of my favorite authors, Susan Sontag, once said taste develops unevenly.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely felt that really hard when I was young. I'm sure I still do. I probably have terrible taste in food or something.
This past year I've really gotten into MF Doom. Like I really couldn't stand rap before.
Yeah.
Something about him and like just the way he uses samples and just like his lyrics and stuff, it really drew me in. And from that, I've delved into like a bit of the 90s, like KMD and
That's really
stuff
cool.
like that. Yeah, is there any recommendations for that obscure underground stuff?
It kind of depends like what catches your ear, because at the time we did like a lot of like, in my head this is like a cliche, but I did kind of split it up between like East and West Coast, even because the East Coast stuff is like kind of harder and darker.
Yeah.
And even in the like underground, it's the same thing. And then on the West Coast stuff was like more fun. It was like more goofy wordplay, like a lot of like rapping about smoking weed and stuff. So we would listen to like this stuff's not like super obscure, but like Souls of Mischief and Hieroglyphics. And you know, Dell became really famous in the fucking the Gorillas, but that was his original group, you know, and he was always like the really goofy one. But those bands had a huge scene and like tons of offshoots, and like AC Alone and Freestyle Fellowship. That was some other West Coast stuff, like Bay Area stuff. Most stuff that I listened to, I think, was from the Bay Area, and
Cool.
And East Coast stuff like Mobb Deep. That's not that underground, but that's some really hard shit. But
yeah, it never occurred to me that like, because like with a lot of this emo, screamo, whatever you want to call it, like there's a whole underground like ecosystem of bands that like you can only find on like YouTube, and like that's like the only remnants of what they made, and it like extends to hip hop. It didn't even occur to me that there's like a whole
totally. And a lot of the stuff that I'm like was my favorite stuff is stuff that I only have on cassette tape that I used to have to order from a paper catalog from like a guy
nice
who had a distro. It's like totally parallel to punk, but I never really fully experienced that in punk because I was a little old for that. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because I just caught the tail end of it in hip hop, you know, like ordering tapes and shit from like, I remember going on vacation with my family down to the Bay Area, and I was like, Dad, there's this guy, he sells tapes and he's in Oakland. Like, can I just go and get some tapes from him so I don't have to wait for them in the mail? You know, we're already here. And my dad was a good sport, and he was like, sure. So we went, but it was just like a fucking like 20-year-old dude in his apartment.
That's cool.
And he like pulled out a Tupperware thing full of tape. I was like, I thought he had like a store, you know, I'm just a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is pretty weird, even as a kid. But I got my tapes. I remember I got Sacred Hoop. That was another West Coast guy, and that guy's still around.
Nice.
What's funny is
that's the shit.
Oh, go ahead.
That's awesome. No, that's the shit. I feel like, you know, that's few and far between these days. That's really, I wish I could experience stuff like that.
I got really into like Anticon at the end. Have you heard of them? Because all those guys kind of went more like indie art rock almost.
Okay. No, I have not.
But I remember like, this is so weird. I went to Amoeba Records in the Bay with my family on that vacation, and I saw a guy there and I recognized him, and I said, hey, are you Dose One? And he goes, yeah, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know. I've just seen a picture of you, like, in a record. And he's
nice.
like, have you seen us perform? I was like, no. He's like, no. What the fuck? I was like 13. And from New Mexico. I said, no, I'm from New Mexico. I just recognized you. He's like, I'm sure he remembers it because that's fucking weird.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, but I don't know. The world's small, I guess, when you're younger and really paying attention, is obsessed with music and stuff. I don't know. It's just funny. I went to the Bay Area and I saw a rapper that I knew of. It's really weird. But that was kind of my origins, especially like in recording and making my own music and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess New Ruins was the first thing you guys like released on a label, but you've been kind of recording stuff for a little while now.
Yeah, and we already felt like we were like an old band at that point, and I think I was like, we drove to Kansas. We saved up money and drove to Kansas to record New Ruins, and I think I was like 16 or 17.
What drew you to Kansas?
We were really into the Appleseed cast, and we didn't really like their stuff that was new at the time, but we liked the older Get Up Kids stuff. And we're fans of a lot of bands from that area. And they had, the Get Up Kids had done one major label release, and part of what they did with the money was they opened a recording studio.
Oh, cool.
And that's where we went. And we recorded with this guy, Ed Rose, who was like the resident engineer, whatever. He was like the engineer there.
Okay. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does mastering or something.
Yeah, he had done the like Get Up Kids and the Casket Lottery and Appleseed Cask and Coalesce and all the bands from that area. And from that fame, he's, got bands like us and stuff.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when we got there, he was just changing his approach and to like a way more polished version, which is why that album sounds really polished, because we didn't actually want that.
Okay. Yeah, it is very clean.
Yeah, we were really
sure.
unhappy with it when we got it. We were like creeped out by it. We didn't like it.
Wow. Did you tell him that at all?
Did we what?
Did you tell him that at all? Like to
Not really. He
try
wouldn't have heard it
dirtying up?
anyways because we were just kids.
Yeah.
And he was annoyed with us because we had trouble playing to a click track because we had never done it. The drums took like 3 days. They were supposed to take a day. And I think a lot of it was doctored, and then to get it in time. And then I had a tough time with the vocals, and he did a lot of rearranging of the song. Like he took a producer kind of approach to some of the songs, which like we didn't ask him to do. But we trusted him, and we were open to it. We were just kind of happy to be there. But then when we got the final product, we were like, I wish we would have just like kept our song how we wanted it.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of engineers that I've recorded with kind of take that producer role. I feel like it's getting like more and more common these days, especially.
Yeah, and he took us seriously because at the time we were pretty good at our instruments for how old we were. And the funny part about circling back to how Kevin couldn't tune his own bass, Kevin did his parts like all first take, and this guy Ed, he loved Kevin, and we were like so annoyed because we're like, God, Kevin doesn't even like fucking practice, like he just does his stuff like right away, and it takes us like days. We did the guitars and stuff okay, but it was just like it was pretty brutal. And it cost a lot of money. We spent $10,000 on it.
Oh wow.
And we had all just saved up the money.
Were y'all expecting to like track together live, or were you pretty familiar with like track or like instrument by instrument recording at that point?
Yeah, we were used to multi-tracking because we had to do that out of necessity from not having enough microphones to even do it, or running into issues with isolation without even like really reading about it, just like trying it and being like, oh, that the bleed was problematic. We even have like one EP that I recorded where I recorded Buster playing the drums with no scratch tracks and no backing tracks. And no metronome. He just played them by memory, and then we all just recorded over the drums.
Oh wow! Just tried to time it with everyone else.
Yeah, he just kind of played the song in his head and played drums, and it actually worked out okay.
Is that EP out?
I have it, but it's not on the internet as far as I know. But it sounds pretty good because the drums were isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you guys I'm sure you guys were tight. You knew the tunes. Like that's not. I'm sure it wasn't a huge feat.
And we were just recording for fun at that time. We weren't like, we had no like ambitions to release anything, or even when we did New Ruins, think maybe we thought something would happen with it, but we just wanted to have a good recording and record with this person that we respected and stuff. So
For sure.
yeah.
Cool. So that comes out, and what you guys put it out on a label?
Yeah, there was a band that had played in Santa Fe on tour, one of the many bands, but they were called The Evaluation, and they had been on this really little label called Luho. And I don't know, somehow that got us in touch with this label, and he put it out, and one of the guys from that Evaluation band did the artwork, and nothing really happened with it because I mean the label was just tiny, and the other stuff they were releasing was not really in the same category. I would say it was more like DC influenced stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it sound cooler than it was too, because a lot of these bands were all like, a few of the bands were like vague, ambiguously like Christian bands, and we couldn't really like figure out like it was just a little bit weird for us, but we didn't have any other options, so we were like, this is cool, he's gonna make 1,000 CDs, so let's just go for it.
Let's take it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we didn't even, we hadn't really toured yet or anything. So, but as soon as that was out, we just moved on to the next music. We were not like, oh, we need to tour on this album. Like, we weren't in that mindset at all. We're just like, oh, let's write some more songs. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Shit.
Are you guys playing like local shows at that time?
Yeah, all the time. We probably played a couple shows a month at least. So
Cool.
all at the same place pretty much.
Right on.
So we were just, yeah. And then we did do a little touring even when I was in high school, which I can't believe my parents let me do. But
yeah, I wish I got to start that early. My first tour was I was like 19, I think.
that's pretty young too. That's probably like a good time, because the first tours we had were pretty disastrous. Like one, we had to fly home because our van broke down, and the shows are all shit.
Man.
You don't know anybody, and no one takes you seriously because you're just a kid, and
Right.
like it's you have to like, yeah, it's a pain in the ass. I would say 19's pretty young, because I think I might have been 15 or 16, but the other, John and Kevin, they were 2 years older, so they were probably 18 or something close to. Yeah. Someone had to be able to buy us cigarettes. I can't remember who, but
Right. Did you guys have fun though on that first tour?
yeah, for sure. Really
Yeah.
chaotic, but those were fun for sure, because everything was just like really chaotic. But we didn't even know, we couldn't even really be disappointed because we had no expectations,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so New Ruins comes out. Was there like a dispute with the label or something about the release or something? I thought I remember.
I can't remember, but I remember we didn't really like this guy very much. I don't really remember. There was something. I literally can't remember though, but there was definitely something. And we had an argument with like another label in the future, so I'm like trying to remember what's what.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's some like archived forum online where there's like
I do remember
like
something, but I don't remember what. I'm sure in retrospect it's like pretty stupid, but I don't know if it was about money or like the rights to the songs or like something like that. It had to be one of those things, or like he didn't give us the amount of CDs he said he was going to give us or something. I don't know. The guy was just like doing the label like as a, I don't know if he was trying to actually do it for real, or if it was just a side thing, or I don't know. We moved on pretty quickly because a year later or whatever, we moved to Olympia to go to college. 2 of us did. We all moved up there together.
Okay. You and John, right?
Me and
Moved up
Buster.
there? Oh, okay.
John and Kevin moved up there with their girlfriends. They broke up with their girlfriend, or their girlfriends broke up with them pretty shortly after. So they were kind of just hanging around, and we were playing music up there. And then they eventually went back to New Mexico. So it was just me and Buster up in Olympia, Washington, going to school, and we would write some music together. And then on the holiday breaks, we would just go super hard and I'd be like, okay, guys, we have these songs and we need to record these songs and we need to do this and that. And we need to tour the entire summer. We would tour the entire summers. And
awesome.
That was a time when when we first moved up there together in Seattle, we recorded that Goldie Hawn EP I mentioned. And then I met a lot of people in college that showed me a ton of music. And that's when we started changing our music. So,
okay, that kind of that music you were exposed to kind of shaped the sound.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened because, and when I was younger, there was bands like that played in Santa Fe. Like I remember Page 99 and Majority Rule and some bands like that from Virginia had come through and people really liked them and stuff, but they were just like one of the many, many bands that we all liked because growing up in a place as isolated as Santa Fe, we liked anything that came through as long as the band was like tight and good, kind of a serious band. We kind of were really open-minded to whatever. So we weren't into it. I mean, we were really into our specific like emo thing, but we kind of liked tons of stuff. Like when I was younger, I also played in like some like more metal kind of bands, and at that same time as Kidcrash, and I, we liked a lot of stuff. We liked Botch or something just as much as we liked, the Appleseed Cast. Like it didn't really, we weren't like stuck on one thing entirely, but. I was just going to say when I moved up to Olympia, I found out a bunch of music, but I got more like into like a certain thing, because there was more of a community around it, and that's where it seemed like shit was happening, all the DIY bands and shows and house shows, like everyone was kind of doing similar music, so I just kind of I latched on more to that,
For sure. Yeah, you guys seem like, just like, from what I could find about, like, how extensively you toured and just, like, how tight y'all are, like, live and on the record, you seem to take it pretty seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we're jokers, but we did always take playing really seriously, especially, like, the recording aspect of it, like, later on.
So on I'm going off of Spotify, but it says the I Haven't Had a Date EP was after the after New Ruins so that was like 2 years later or 1 year later.
Yeah, and there is some stuff in between, but I can't remember exactly what's when. I have one idea of maybe some stuff in between, but that's definitely after. That was when we moved up to Seattle. That was the first thing we recorded.
Okay. So you're all in Seattle at that point. And then 2006, the demo, that was self-recorded?
Yes. We recorded that in a storage unit where we used to practice in Olympia using my computer, but some mics I had rented from the college.
What was your interface?
I had a Digi 002, and I had gotten one pretty young. It cost $1,000 when I bought it, and I think now those are worth about $1.
Yeah, that was like the predecessor to the Pro Tools interface, wasn't it? Like the Avid.
Yeah, I mean, the company was owned by Avid, but they didn't usually use that in I don't even think it says Avid anywhere on it, but the 002, there must have been a 001, but I never had that one. What
was that, like 16 channels?
This one's 4 channels with pre's and then 4 without pre's, so I had 2 shitty 2-channel preamps I'd use to get 8 inputs, and then eventually I got like when we recorded Jokes, I got a Behringer ADAT, so I could get another 8 channels. So I had 16 by the end of it. So it could do 16, but you had to have other gear,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the demo, you're just using that 8-track at that point?
Yeah, I must have
Okay.
it had to have been at least 8 because we definitely didn't do it with just 4. I remember recording it, and I remember even some of the mics we used and stuff, but I'm trying to remember, I was like, where was the computer sitting? The room was only a 10 by 10 plywood storage unit, so.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds pretty decent. You got a nice roomy tone going on.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, it's not I remember I remember certain details. I know that the overheads I put on Waves room Studio A reverb.
Okay, right on.
You know what I mean? And that and because of the bleed of everything, it kind of made it sound like we were in a bigger room, but a better sounding room for sure. I'm sure the dry record. I wonder if I have the sessions of that somewhere. I think those might have actually been lost on an old hard drive, but I still have the sessions of everything after that.
What was your DAW at that point?
Pro Tools, because that's all you could use with the Digio too.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it came with it,
Gotcha.
so that's what I had learned on, and I just learned on I have a book called Pro Tools for Dummies.
Nice.
Yeah, it's sitting right over there. I've had it since high school. And then it turned out the guy that wrote the book lived in a little town called Lamy, just 20 minutes outside of Santa Fe. Just pure coincidence. I bought the book at Borders. It was just a pure coincidence, and he was teaching a class, and so I went to his class too.
Oh wow! So that book and that class was that your only kind of recording exposure?
Yeah, I did take a night class at college for recording, but at Evergreen where I went to school. But I didn't really learn anything in that. That was just more for fun.
Okay.
You could learn how to use a tape machine and stuff. I did also take that demo that we were talking about, and I ran it through the tape machine because I thought that would make it better or something, but
nice.
It didn't really do anything, of course, because it's a really nice tape machine, so it's really clean,
Just the act of doing it is
right.
We're analog now.
That was a big thing, and I had been I was a reader of tape op,
yeah,
and so I got a lot of tips and tricks from tape op and the tape op message board.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was having trouble with Pro Tools, I'd go on the DigiDesign user conference. You've probably been on it if you're a Pro Tools user. It's like
a forum.
It's a giant forum to help troubleshoot Pro Tools because it's really buggy,
Yeah, every question.
Yeah,
in history has been asked.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And you put the specs of all your stuff and. It's really useful.
That's pretty cool. So it was, all right, it was on the laptop. And do you remember any of the mics you were using, for drums and, amps and stuff?
The one I remember the most is the Sennheiser 421 because I had never used one before. Mm-hmm. And I had it in the wrong orientation when we were recording bass.
Oh, did you have it upright
yes, because
a condenser? Yeah.
Everyone, I'm sure, makes that mistake unless they've seen it. Because you're well, why would the metal band face the sound source? That doesn't make sense. But that's how it is. So, so the bass I struggled with because it sounded thin because I was recording it at a 90-degree off axis.
Yeah.
I had a cheap... I had bought some Russian Octava overheads that I used.
Nice. I hear they're good. Yeah, I want to get a pair of those. Yeah, those little pencils.
I guess there used to be a problem where getting fake ones was an issue. I don't think anyone's wasting. I mean, I'm sure the people that were making fake Octavas are now making fake iPhones. There's no money in making fake Russian mics. Yeah. But I had them and they're fine. And then I had a cheap condenser, AKG condenser, like a really like, like a $100, $200 one. And then I'm sure I was just using like 57s on everything else. I had like a Beta 52 I used on the kick drum.
Okay.
Pretty standard shit, especially for that.
So that all that that quote unquote room tone is just that Waves plugin.
Yeah, and I wanted it to sound. I had been really obsessed with the drum sound of this band called Stop It. Had you know of them?
No.
They were a band from Richmond, Virginia, and it was. Have you ever heard of City of Caterpillar?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was somebody from City of Caterpillar and somebody from Majority Rule and somebody from, like all those like early 2000s like Richmond, Virginia bands, Screamo or whatever you would want to call it. I don't think they called themselves Screamo, but yeah, they called themselves like hardcore or punk or something.
Yeah.
They weren't. But it was like people of those bands. It was like their next kind of generation band. And I loved the recording, and I had emailed the guy who recorded it, and he told me that he just used like a reverb plugin. So I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. And then I asked him, I was like, also the bass is incredible. The bass player is this guy, Adam Jaresko, who's still in bands, and he's an artist, and he's like an amazing bass player. And like I know a lot of bass players who refer to that sound. And I asked him about how he did it, and he said he did it on a Line 6 bass pod.
Oh, right on.
I was like, all right, man. It just shows you what sounds good is good.
Exactly.
For all I knew, it was like the fucking coolest amp and the cool, he recorded it with some cool mic, and it's just.
Yeah, I always tend to like romanticize all that stuff, and then they'll say like in an interview that it was like like a Line 6 pod or something. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so that kind of gave me confidence though to just like use what I had. And not stress out too much about like gear. I never really cared about gear because it was just hard enough to get enough mic stands together to record a full band,
Yeah.
So I was happy to have the college to rent stuff from. And then one summer, the next thing we recorded, I think, was our Jokes LP. And we did that one. That was all the songs from the demo. But we like made some slight arrangement changes. We played the songs faster, and I
was gonna say, yeah, they're all on the demo. They're all kind of slower, which was cool to hear, for sure. I didn't find the demo until way after.
Yeah, I kind of like some of them slower, but we were just like into playing them faster. Probably at the time I was listening to some bands that were faster, and I was probably decided, we're too slow. So
where was that demo? Where was Jokes done?
Yeah, so this one has kind of a cooler story. Like, well, I guess the storage unit might be kind of cool, but Buster's stepdad had money, so he had this nice house out like in this area called Las Campanas outside of Santa Fe. It's like a lot of rich people live there. And for some reason they were gone. I don't know if they were just like on a long trip or something. They were like gone the whole summer. So we had the house to record at, and like we could make noise because there's nobody else around.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the cops got called like once or something. But so I had known this from experience, but also from, reading a lot of tape op, that the room was really important for the drum sound. That, no matter how good the drummer, and like if you had a good drummer and you had the drum set tuned properly, the room was probably the next most important. I mean, if you're going for a room sound, it's probably even relevant if you're doing like a tight drum sound. You don't want to do it in like a room with shitty reflections all over, that. So it's just like I knew that acoustically the room was really important. And fortunately, the architecture in New Mexico lends itself to recording because there's not a lot of parallel surfaces. The roofs in the nicer houses or older houses have these things called vigas, which are like big logs basically across the ceiling. And they used to be kind of structural in old house. They used to be structural in old houses, but in new houses they're more just like a decorative thing. Mm-hmm. But there's like big logs across the top with like wood and sometimes like concaved plaster, and then the floors are usually saltillo tile, which is not perfectly flat. And it's like, it can be really bright sounding, but it sounds good. It's probably not as good as having a wood floor for drums, but like it sounds good. And, there's just like, and that open floor plans in these nice houses. So like, you're not just like stuck in a little room. You can move things around, and it was pretty like ideal. And, Buster I think he had gotten a new drum set too. And just like, so we were pretty much set up for success with that. And I could even put the room mics wherever in different rooms. And I could really experiment there. So we tracked the drums pretty fast and with scratch tracks there. And then we just took forever kind of to do of course bass we did it in like a couple hours, and then we did the the guitars took a while, and I even set up we were just talking about this, me and John, but he reminded me that he was nervous about recording, and he hadn't had some of his parts worked out, I think, so fully. So I showed him how to basically record and punch in and do and undo. We never used takes. I never figured out how to use takes in Pro Tools to this day.
Oh, like playlists?
Yeah, I never figured that out. We would just like do it and undo it until you got it.
That's for the better.
Okay. I think so, because I've done sessions with takes and it gets like there's already too many options when you're recording. So
yeah, you end up with like 9,000 playlists, and then you're like, oh yeah, that was good, but like let me do another. Yeah. And then like you never know which one is the actual keeper. So that's definitely, I mean, I grew up with like, modern recording, it's all about the playlists and the comps and stuff.
Sure.
So I kind of grew up around a lot of that. And
I never figured out how to do that.
Yeah, it took some like willpower and strength to like move away from that and try to get back to the roots of like, okay, just get the part until it's right,
Yeah, totally. And, we'd punch in a little section if we had to. And it was a pretty easy way to work, and it still took a long time. And, there was no, like at that time, there was no like warp.
Oh, yeah.
There was no warp. So we just had to like, the punch-ins were, they had to be what they were. So it'd be funny to see those sessions and what they really looked like. But I set up John to basically record himself. So he was just out there in the fucking desert alone, just recording his parts, but he did a really good job and he didn't screw. I was just like, do not delete anything.
Yeah, right. Save every 10 seconds.
And then I took the recording back to Olympia at school, and I just mixed it in my room the best I could. And
headphones or monitors?
I had some monitors, some like event, like kind of low end monitors, and I probably had some headphones too, because even at that time I did have some, like from reading tape op, I knew like it was all about get to know your monitors, like use different sources, like test it in your car. Like I knew that stuff already, so I wasn't like super naive about that stuff. And I knew about like, subtractive EQing and, trying to take it easy on certain effects. My only regret of the mixing of the album was when we sent it to the mastering engineer. And I don't think it was really the mastering engineer's place to even say this, but he told me to turn up the kick drum like a few dB or something. And I did that. And every time I hear the Rick, I'm like, the kick drum's too loud. It sounds stupid. And
Oh man,
And so I'm like, man, I should not have listened to him. But
I love that. Like that drum sound is just fucking awesome. It's like one of my favorites. I mean, those tones as a whole.
oh, really? Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think it's really the room, you know?
Yeah, everything just like sits so well together, and like the contrast between like the, you know, the neck pickup cleans and then like that really gritty overdrive sound. It's just like it's one of my favorites.
Wait till you hear that Stop It recording I mentioned. That's way better. But I'll have to send you some stuff. But kind of, I will actually send you. Well, maybe I should say it. Like the recordings that I was really into that time were that Stop It album. It's called Self-Made Maps. I was super. This is a band that a lot of people don't know, but probably the biggest influence to Kidcrash at that time was a band called Yage from Germany. Have you heard of them?
Nope.
Oh, you're gonna hear it and you're gonna go, oh, Kidcrash sucks compared to this band. They have an album called Anders Leben, and it sounds incredible. It sounds incredible, and the music is incredible. The vocals may annoy some people because they're German and they sing like half in German, half in English, but like the music is a huge huge influence to us.
How do you spell that?
Yage, it's it's named after this psychedelic drug. It's the same, I guess, as ayahuasca. It's spelled Yage.
Okay.
And they were on Abolition Records, like some real punk shit. And we were really into Engine Down, like the earlier albums. Like there's one album called To Bury Within the Sound that was recorded by Jay Robbins of the band Burning Airlines, and he's done a bunch of shit. He was kind of in the same, you know, like Mark Trombino was in Drive Like Jehu, and then he went on to record like all the Blink-182 albums, and he's kind of that era. Like he was in a band that wasn't very, I mean, Drive Like Jehu was bigger than Burning Airlines, but like they were in the same like kind of world, but they just, you know, their bands fizzled out, and then they decided to get more into engineering. We were really into ISIS.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, and the singer Aaron is from Santa Fe.
Oh, right on.
And now we became friends later because he lives around here, but I never knew him growing up because he was like 10 years older and had already moved away. But and Matt Bayless recording, we were especially into that album Oceanic by them.
Yeah, that's my favorite one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I liked roomy drum sounds for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you were there was a sonic goal in your mind.
Yeah.
You were sort of going after something.
Try to sound natural and like big.
Yeah.
We also liked a lot of like math rock too, of course. So we like Don Caballero, and I don't know if Steve Albini had recorded that stuff.
He did a few. He did their first record. He did American Dawn. Steve Albini is like my number one probably,
and he would have been mine too, but I didn't really know of him at the time because that was more advanced shit that I didn't know about. I didn't know about shellac when we recorded Jokes. You know, I didn't find out about that until maybe I knew about it actually, but I didn't really know about Steve Albini besides probably coming across his name in Tape Op, you know, which they probably mention every other page. So
right.
But I hadn't like really, I didn't have a big, but now, you know, yeah, that's kind of the sound I wanted, but I didn't really, you know, have his records as a reference yet because I just didn't know about him.
I definitely heard the ISIS influence. I'm trying to think if there was any others that I...
Yeah, Majority Rule. We really liked Majority Rule. They had kind of like more groove. They were heavy, but they were a little more groove oriented. Well, at least some like...
Yeah.
Like there was the parts of Majority Rule that we liked.
Yeah. I noticed, so on New Ruins, it's sort of more like... I mean, you guys get kind of into the dueling guitar mini type thing, but... more or less, I feel like there's usually, for the most part, there's like a rhythm and then there's like a lead kind of going on.
For sure. Because at that time, I think, yeah, because so on the one, like going, I know it's kind of like messing with the timeline now, but going back to that, we as much as we were into like these mid 90s emo bands that we were a little too young to see. Like we ended up seeing some of them, but as much as we liked Cap and Jazz and Braid and all those types of bands, whose early records are really weird and really cool, we connected more, I think just because we were younger, with their later stuff, which got more poppy.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the nature of being more poppy is having more like delineated like guitar rolls, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And we were also like, it was of the time of like, even then we kind of listened as a guilty pleasure, but like Brand New had an album that was really big and like their first like big one. And then like not Taking Back Sunday, but like the more like, because while that was a huge band, there was like all this whole underground scene of bands like that. And we definitely liked that. We really liked this Canadian band called Monine.
Okay.
I bet if you went and listened to them, it sounds a lot like New Ruins. I haven't listened to them in like 20 years or something. But I'm 36 now. But I have a feeling like, you know, just like bands, you know, poppier stuff for sure. So we kind of, the influence on the later stuff, like we took what we already knew, but we had just so many more influences, and like the huge math rock influence, of course, you know.
Yeah, like that whole like dueling lead thing going on the guitar, where like sometimes they're lining up and sometimes they're clashing a little bit. Like that's
right.
I was really into that, and I can hear that in like like you said, Braid's early stuff, and they just had their part. They weren't like you play rhythm, I play lead. I feel like each guitarist just had their part.
Exactly. And the way that we wrote songs was that almost exclusively, besides maybe like a couple parts, I would write all my guitar parts first, and then we would change some of them, of course, but we would like write everything around my guitar parts. Mm-hmm. To the point where like if John wrote a guitar part or Kevin wrote a bass line first, I had a lot of trouble coming up with something on top of them, where they had developed this skill where they could just play over anything I made. I would like struggle. I'd be like, I don't get what you're doing. Like what? They'd be like, see, now you know what it feels like.
Yeah, I can hear that in the songs for sure. Very, very guitar centric. Some of those lines are fucking insane, man. What tunings did you guys play in?
And also, if you're curious, you could always listen to. I'm always in the left channel, and John's always in the right channel. We always stuck to that. But the New Ruins is in drop D, but like half step down because it was easier for me to sing. And then Jokes was in the same tuning. It's just drop D, but it's half step down, but it's just drop D, except for that little interlude song, Kissed by a Roach, that's just guitar. And that's just John on that. I don't play on that. And then
he's doing both parts?
Yes. And he was really into this band called Dilute. Have you heard of them?
No.
It's basically just a ripoff of Dilute. So
Word.
Or at least that's what he would say. And then or Khaki King, he was into Khaki King.
Okay.
Who's an instrumental guitarist. But
I'm writing all these down.
Yeah. Her style has been much imitated. What's really crazy about some of that stuff, like that open tuning shit, that used to be exclusively a thing of like math rock, and you know, there's origins of it in like Joni Mitchell and stuff, and that was like Khaki King's influence. But to this is a tangent, but to see how that, for whatever reason, that style has like exploded is unbelievable to me. I would have never ever guessed that would have become like a TikTok thing, you know? That band Polyphia, have you heard them?
Yeah.
They sound like a Gen Z Don Caballero or something. I mean, I would have never thought that like instrumental, like, cause it's like a mashup of like math rock and kind of just like pop, for lack of a better word, because they have like pop production influences and stuff. But
yeah, some of the newer like emo, quote unquote emo bands, like a lot of like the female fronted stuff, like Julian Baker and stuff. A lot of them do like open D or something. I mean, it makes sense because it's, you know, it's easier to get to the chords, I guess. He sort of just kind of hold the root down and let the high strings ring out. But it's definitely exploded.
And I don't know Julian, but I guess in a podcast, like this was years ago, she mentioned Kidcrash.
Really?
As like one of her influences, yeah. So there's a direct line maybe from, but I know she got really, really popular. So
that's interesting.
that was like years ago. Someone was like, "Hey, this person Julian Baker mentioned you in a podcast," and I had never heard of her at that point. But now I see her name. Now I notice her name all the time. But
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that's kind of funny. But anyways, what were we talking about? The guitar. Oh, just probably like the guitar, the guitar interplay. That obviously became a really big part of our sound. So so later, for later albums, we experimented with tuning a little bit, but nothing crazy. Like Snacks, we did.
It was like a D minor type thing. I was trying to sound them out, and I was like, "How the fuck did you guys do this stuff?"
It's Dadgad, but it's Dadgae.
Okay.
It's Dadgay, which we thought was funny because Buster's dad is gay. Very juvenile, but it's Buster's dad, so we love him. And but yeah.
So it's sort of it's standard enough, but it still gives you that flexibility.
I think Dadgad was just like a little too something or other. I wanted to keep the relationship between the high strings the same, and so we went with Dadgay, but we only used it for one record because it the problem with open tunings is they make everything sound the same, homogeneous.
Right. Yeah, that record. I mean, Snacks is my favorite by you guys.
Okay, it's my favorite too. So I don't know why, but it just seems to age the best for some reason.
Yeah, I was between that and Jokes for the longest time, but Snacks, it sounds like one long epic song, and
that's how we did write it. So, we did write it that way. So, I can't get mad because I have heard people say that, it all sounds the same, and I'm like, well, it kind of does. But there was because we did a couple things in between. We did a couple splits in between, 3 splits in between.
What bands was that with?
We did one with a Mexican band called Arce Moreda, and it was like a 5-inch. We did one song for that Buster and I had recorded at college, and then actually at the studio in our college, and then I recorded John and Kevin's parts when I came home to New Mexico on some school break, and then the other song that we did from the same session was a split with a band called Antietam, and we did a split with a band called Coffin Dancer from Florida that we had toured with, and that one I had recorded in our friend's garage just because that was the only place we could do it, and we just
nice.
I had this 10-minute song almost, and I just winter break I said, okay guys, we gotta learn this song. We just learned it, and they just made up their parts really fast and we recorded it.
That's awesome.
I'm still not sure how we did that because my brain does not work that way anymore.
Did you meet those bands on tour and you were just kind of
yeah, we'd meet actually probably I met them on MySpace. We'd find each other through other friends' bands, through the top. I don't know. How old are you?
27.
27. So I think you missed MySpace then. But
I had it in 5th grade.
Sure. But do you know this concept of the top 8 or whatever?
No.
Okay, so on your MySpace page, it was amazing for bands, and there's never been anything like it. We used to make fun of it at the time while we were using it, but looking back on it now, it's dude, it's so cool. Because it had, and that's where Bandcamp got the idea of the music player, obviously. But it was Bandcamp basically just distilled one aspect of MySpace, but they got rid of mostly the social aspect of it. So you had like top 8, which was basically, and then it became like top 16, or then you could like, do some HTML and make it like more or something like. But anyways,
Yeah.
you'd basically pick your like top friends. Now, if this was a personal page, you would put like your friends. I never had one, but like you put your friends. But for bands, you'd put other bands or your record label. So you would find out about a lot of other bands through, because like if I found this band Coffin Dancer, for example, well, their top 8 would have the band Capsule from Florida, and it would have the band Devices from Florida, and then it might have some other bands that aren't from Florida that they knew from tour, like a band like Furnace from, these are like things I'm actually trying to remember, like from the north, from New Hampshire or whatever, and you would just click on them, and then you'd find their top 8 and their top 8. And it was pretty amazing, like, way to link bands together. And then, of course, there was music players, and you could list your influences, and you could search bands by influences. And you could put your tour dates on there and sell shit through there. And like that demo, that 2006 demo, I sold through a PayPal button on MySpace, and I burned and made like over 500 CDRs on my computer until it broke, and sold them for $5 a piece through MySpace. So I can't talk shit about MySpace, but
made to order.
yeah, and that's how we would book our tours and stuff. So like anytime I met a band at that point, it was either on tour or through MySpace, probably.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know MySpace was so good for making connections like that. Because now it's all social media. I mean, you can find, the bands you're friends with, and then the ones they follow and stuff. But I guess MySpace was the first one to kind of pick that thing up.
Yeah, and before that, the way I used to find out about bands was like reading liner notes of CDs, and the thank yous. They would list bands that they were friends with, and then I would just like buy those CDs for like $16.99 and hope they were good.
Yeah, right. Take a chance.
Yeah, but so that's kind of, and yeah, so we did a split with this band Coffin Dancer, a 10-inch, and then there was a rough period because our drummer Buster, he had to go to rehab, and then but like as soon as he got out of rehab, I was like, all right, we're going next album, get back to work.
Was he down to get back to drumming?
Yeah, kind of. Yes and no. He was definitely lazier for sure. We were all living in Portland at the time. We moved to Portland. There's a lot of like coming and going, but we actually did all end up living in the same place in Portland.
Was that like a collective move? Like let's move the band up to Portland, or did it all just kind of work out?
It all kind of worked out. Like we were not going to break up, so they didn't, our other bandmates didn't want to move to Olympia, and we didn't want to stay in Olympia, so we'd made some friends down in Portland. So we moved to Portland, and then the other guys were like, Portland seems cool, and so we all lived there, and that's where we wrote and recorded Snacks, and we did that in our friend Jared's basement. So that one has like a less expensive house sound. It has more of a basement sound. So yeah, we were all in Portland together. That's where we wrote all the Snacks material, and then recorded it in this basement with just the gear we had. And I was going with that one for like an even more minimalist approach. I felt like Jokes was like too EQ'd. It was like too hyped sounding, and I wanted this one to sound like drier on purpose. And I know some people I've talked to don't like that about it. They don't, but for me, I'm glad I mixed it that way because it still did age better for me. It's like, it's kind of not exciting sounding, but I didn't make any weird, I didn't do anything weird with the EQ or anything.
I'm all about that kind of stuff. I mean, I love both releases, like I said, but Snacks I can bump extra loud because like the high end isn't super crisp, and it's kind of more it's kind of more MIDI.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like scoop out a bunch of mids on everything like I normally would. I mean, on drums especially, and to make them sound more modern. And we used a different drum set. We didn't use Buster's DW kit, which is more modern sounding, and in the room, and we just didn't have as many options. And I was using my own amps for the first time, and I wanted to use like less distortion. Also, I didn't like the overdrive sound on Jokes. I thought it was like too distorted for what we were doing. So
yeah, it was quite the contrast between the clean and the distorted. Was there even like a clean, quote unquote clean and dirty tone on Snacks, or was it all basically like one tone?
it was kind of one tone. There was two, but one was just slightly dirtier and slightly louder. And we never, our entire discography, we never used a single guitar pedal. So the way that we would do it is I had a JCM 800, which was like really bright, and an SG, and my SG was bright because of the pickups. And so I would always play on the neck pickup. And John had a Marshall JCM 900, and he would only ever use the clean channel, just like cranked, which produced a lot of like overdrive, but he would also only use the neck pickup because like that's what I did. And the other thing was we listened to all this like quote unquote Midwest emo, and we weren't gear people. It's funny because I build guitar amps now, and I have for now like over 10 years, but like I wasn't a gear person, and so we didn't. Now if I hear a recording like that, I'm like, okay, well they're using single coil pickups. And
right.
I can even like tell like when it's a telly or versus like the middle position on a humbucking guitar to get that more like, mid-scooped, cleaner sound. We didn't really know how to achieve that, so we just used the neck pickup of our SGs and really bright amps. Even for the overdrive sound, we were using the neck pickup.
On Jokes, was it the neck pickup?
Yeah, Jokes, it's a neck pickup too. But they're low output humbuckers through really bright amps, and so it kind of all... Because if you listen, it doesn't really sound like a bridge pickup. It sounds like, I don't know, it kind of created a unique sound by accident.
Yeah, it's very high end, but not that like high mid, I guess, of a bridge pickup.
Exactly. It's not like as mid-rangey and cutting as a bridge pickup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we used a Marshall cab I had on Jokes that had these like really like disparaged Celestion speakers. They're called like G1270s. They're like, nobody likes them. And I don't think I liked them either. I always struggled recording them. They always sounded kind of like buzzy or hollow or kind of weird, and we made it work, but like on Snacks we used a mix of like some early amplifiers I made, and we were still always using the neck pickup, and on SGs we didn't mess around with guitars or anything, but we used different cabs and amps and stuff, and we're going for like dirtier clean and less distorted overdrive, so we still had two like sounds. With the way we would do it was with a volume pedal or like a volume switch.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd set the amp to like as gainy as we wanted it, and this is what we did on Jokes too. So like the amp would be fully gained or whatever, how we wanted it, and then we would use a volume switch. Usually I had like sometimes we'd take a volume pedal and put like washers under the bottom of it.
Okay.
To set our
so it would
clean
go
volume.
to a certain yeah,
because the amps weren't super gainy, so you could easily clean them up, especially because the clean wasn't like super clean. So we would do so that's how we'd get our clean sound, and because that's what we did live, and we never used effects or like overdrive pedals or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So it was all volume knob or volume pedal,
but yeah, it's the same idea. But and then I used a Boss line selector, which is a much better option because I don't know if you've ever used one, but it's an AB box that's like buffered, and so it doesn't suck tone when you cut volume with it, and it has you can use it in a lot of different ways, but one way you can use it, which is how I used it in Kidcrash, is I'd use it as a volume cut, but unlike a volume pedal, there's no impedance. It's buffered, so there's no impedance mismatch. So when you cut the volume, it still stays like bright. So it basically, imagine an A/B box where you can just switch between two little volume controls, and there's two. So not only can you cut one, but you can actually boost the other one, so you can get a clean boost and a clean cut out of this pedal.
Okay. So yeah, leave the amp alone and just
Do it with,
just kind of. So does the box itself have volume?
yes, the box itself has two volume controls on it that are active.
Okay.
So you can, it's not just a passive cut. You can actually like boost 20 dB of gain. So you can, it's cool. I still have it. I still use it. It's really useful because you can do.
And that's powered, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that one's powered. But yeah, I had used some other passive volume switches and pedals. There was one this guy made called the Scalpel, which was basically just a volume knob on a switch that you could bypass.
Nice.
And Electro Harmonics made one too. It didn't sound as good though, called a Signal Pad. Same thing.
Okay. What was the Boss pedal?
Line Selector
Line Selector. Okay.
has a cult following because it's just like one of these utility boxes where that you can find a million uses for.
Yeah. I don't use pedals either. I kind of just set the amp and get the volume in the hands and stuff.
Oh yeah, you're very rare. You're very rare these days.
Dude, every band, I'm down here in Austin, Texas, and like every band, it doesn't matter the genre, every guitarist has like a giant pedal board.
Totally. And that's why I became an amp designer, not a pedal designer, because I was always into amps, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that was kind of like the ethos behind recording Snacks. Like I was like minimal EQ. Like I only did reductive EQ on that as far as I can remember, probably except for the vocals. And then I was like really like principled about it. I was like, I remember like I don't think I do any like EQ stuff like more than like a couple dB on anything.
Mm-hmm. Maybe on like the kick or something.
Yeah, exactly, on stuff like that. Like where like sculpting things doesn't really change the sound too much. But I was pretty judicious with it just because I had heard I think a lot of the recordings I like to listen to in my car stereo were always recordings like that. And
yeah,
I was like, maybe I can just try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it made the mixing a lot quicker. And
yeah, it's a really unique mix for sure. Like I said, one of my favorites. It kind of reminds me of the Captain Jazz full length, just because it's just a very unconventional sound. Like the bass isn't super subby. Like it's very like low MIDI, and
yeah,
it's kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with like the mix of it, but it's just very. It sounds like they're all in a room, but it sounds natural, but it's just kind of, it's unique.
Yeah. I always love that recording too. And like, that was like a really influential thing to us. So I'm sure that's in my head somewhere. It's funny too, because I was just on tour with a project of, I'm playing in a band now called Dreamdecay, and our drummer had this other project that I played bass in, and we were on tour in Chicago. And you know, when people like video your band, they'll tag you or whatever. So I was looking through the tagged things of the band, and someone was like, if I could make my ideal band, this would be it. And I was like, whoa, that's a little... There was like 5 people at our show. I was like, okay, who is this? And so I clicked on it, and it was Tim Kinsella.
No shit.
So I was like, oh my God. And then I told our drummer who's like projected us, I was like, did you see this? And you know, he knows of Cap'n Jazz, but he wasn't as big of a head as I was when I was a kid. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then he was like, oh yeah, I know. He was at our last show too. He's really nice. We've talked sometimes. Like he was totally chill about it. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. And then because I never talked to him before or anything, and we were big fans of like Make Believe and Owls. That was a huge influence of Kidcrash. Was Owls, and
one of my favorites.
Yeah, and I actually DM'd him. I was like, hey man, I play in this band, and like just so you know, when I was like 13 or whatever, I bought Anna Beta Photology or whatever, their discography.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I bought this and this changed my life. And like, I wouldn't even be playing music if it wasn't for this. And he was just like, thanks, dude. That means a lot. And I was just so funny. I totally punished him, but that was just like crazy to me because yes, I totally worshiped that band when I was young. And I've always wanted to ask him like what their influences were.
Yeah. I tried to scour the internet. I know Tim likes Bauhaus and,
They must have liked the Smiths. I figured that.
yeah, for sure.
I figured like the Smiths, and I don't know. I just think it was another case of like they were so young. Whatever they liked, they couldn't figure out how to play it yet. So they ended up coming with something unique because they just like were too inexperienced to like imitate what they liked properly.
Yeah.
That's my
exactly.
that's my big theory. I want to ask him. Maybe next time in Chicago, I'll ask him now.
Yeah, for sure. When was that? When did he tag you in that?
Oh, that was just like in October, just a couple months ago.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, so I was like at a Starbucks. I was like, when I saw it, I was like, this is fucking crazy. But
That's great. Yeah, I remember he was saying in an interview that he like wanted to do like power metal stuff, and I think Mike, the drummer, wanted to. He was into like the Gin Blossoms, and like they were all just coming from so many angles, and I think that's what kind of made it work, just the fusion of all that together.
Totally.
And like being so young and not knowing quite how to execute a certain sound, they just kind of did their own thing.
Right. Now it's easier to imitate because
Everything's been done.
Yeah, everything's been done, and you can just look up how to do anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And
I wanted to ask about guitar miking on Jokes and Snacks, just because I'm curious, because that has by far has been the hardest thing for me, is like getting a good mic'd amp sound.
it's really hard, especially, and so now I build guitar amplifiers, and my whole I've told a lot of people this. I was like, yeah, I'm so happy to be, because I don't really do recordings anymore, and I was like, I'm so happy to like build amps and not do recordings and be on like the primary source side of a recording, because I don't have to worry about recording it. But like the reality is, like, I do all the time for my own purposes and for sound samples, like even more on a way more analytical level.
Yeah.
Because I don't have like a drum mix to like help out the guitar sound. So
yeah, trying to get like the purest representation of that for the sound sample.
yeah, so what I always found, and you probably found the same, is that the hardest guitar sounds to record, especially close mic'd, which is of course like the standard way to do it, is mid-gain sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Recording a totally clean sound is easy for the most part. Usually sounds big and clear and good, and like you don't have to. It's the microphone. You don't. The placement isn't as picky because there's like no harmonics really, and then really distorted sounds are easier because there's so many harmonics. You can mic it further off the center of the speaker, and really just fine tune the high end that way. And sometimes it can sound smaller than it is, but I'm so used to the sound of a close mic'd heavy guitar now that I like don't even hear it that way anymore. I used to kind of have this shock when I'd be playing so loud in the room, and then I'd listen to it and I go, God, that sounds like nothing. But now I'm pretty used to that. But I still have trouble recording mid-gain sounds, like slightly broken up sounds. Like anything in between is really hard because it ends up sounding kind of like flat or harsh, or it's really hard to get right. And when I hear people who get it right, I'm like, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely killed it on the Snacks record for sure.
And I had a huge struggle on that. It was a really, really big struggle to get that to sound even close to how we wanted.
Was that struggle mostly in mixing or mostly in the miking?
In miking and finding the right. We ended up using a weird speaker cabinet, you remember the company Avatar that made like cheap cabinets?
Yeah.
We used like a really early Avatar when they used to, at the beginning, they only made carpet covered cabinets that were like really shallow. Then they started making nicer stuff like and copies of other cabinets. But at the beginning, they only made these really bad cabinets really cheap. And they would use like OEM Eminence speakers, like unlabeled Eminence speakers. And we always hated this cabinet that was in my friend's basement. But like for recording, it sounded pretty good because the speakers, I think they kind of had small magnets. So they were easier they compressed a little bit more, which kind of was flattering to that mid-gain sound, because sometimes I think it can sound too spiky, and it's nicer to like compress it at the source. Probably nowadays I might use like a more transparent compressor like in front, like before even going into the amp, if I was really like focused on that sound. I think a lot of people might use compressors in that way now, but so you can get kind of like a clean overdrive or over, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Where you get the compression
kinda sparkly.
of like a distorted sound, but with a clean sound. And then, or a cleaner sound. And then, yeah, I think I just probably used a 57 on that or something.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, or maybe I could have used a condenser, maybe. I don't remember it because I struggled and like we were like fighting with it, and I remember getting really frustrated. But then in the mix, it sounds okay. And then Jokes was probably just like a 57, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I've been doing like, I had this whole diatribe about getting away from the 57 because like that was the source of my amp miking issues.
It
so
can
I've tried
be,
I've tried like every other amp. I've had decent luck with a 421 and a condenser paired with that. It's a company called Aston. They make a few different condensers, but it's like a large diaphragm, and like the combination of those has I've had my best luck with that so far. But
yeah, have you used impulse responses very much?
No.
Yeah, that's a whole nother world, but it's basically like snapshots of actual mics in certain positions on actual speakers, like that you can use digitally. They're like, if you've used convolution reverbs at all, like it's the same idea. It's taking like a little snapshot, a full frequency snapshot of a mic on a speaker, and you can, if you have a way, you need like a load box to do this, but like if you record your guitar directly, then you can apply these impulse responses. So it's very useful because you can basically do the miking after and change the mic position, the speaker, and you know, tons of companies make impulse responses in varying quality, and like, but it's a good way to audition mics you've never heard, because these companies that make impulse responses have a huge library of mics. So they'll have like a Vintage 30 and a Mesa 412, and they'll have an SM57 on axis, off axis, 1 inch from or half inch from the middle of the cone, or from the dust cap, an inch out, whatever, and then different distances sometimes. And then they'll sometimes have mics that are rooms, and then they'll have this for like 20 different mics. And you can apply this all after the fact.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I've used some like shitty like amp simulators on Pro Tools, but
yeah, this is like not modeling, this is like actual, like they actually set up the mic, run a frequency thing through it, and take this little snapshot called an impulse. Then you put so they've done it with reverbs like for a long time, but they just started doing it with speakers. I don't know why it took them that long to figure out, but
can you go out of the pre of the amp, or do you have to do the load box?
No, you can just go out of the pre. You totally could. You could just do it with like a preamp pedal or something. It's kind of, but you know, if you want to capture your full amp sound, you need a load box. Record that directly in the interface, and then you apply the IR. But it's like a really cool way to like not stress about that. Like,
have you done that for any records?
For the new Dreamdecay album that hasn't come out yet, we did it all. One of the only drawbacks of it is if you can't get acoustic feedback, like if you want it. So we tracked all our like feedback and noise parts separately.
Just straight from the amp with a mic.
Yes, and we like Exactly. And I made my own impulse responses of my own cabs. So
That's cool. What mic do you use for that?
I used a bunch of things. Right now in the rough mix of it, I have just like a 57 because I'm just really
Okay.
used to it. But I have some impulse response programs that have like a bunch of cool mics that I've never come across, like some Bayer dynamic ribbons that are less dark than like the Royers, and this really cool like Shure KM something sounds super good. It sounds super good on guitar. It's kind of like similar qualities to a 57, but it's a condenser and it just like is a little wider sounding. Also, like I have this reminded me of it because you mentioned the 421. Well, I never realized there was like an older version of the 421. It's usually white, and
Yeah.
it sounds really different, and it sounds really good.
I have the 421 I bought is actually, it's an earlier model.
Yeah.
It has a bit more metal on it than the newer ones they're like mostly plastic. It's like a U it's like a specific model called like the U something, but I figured I bought it used. I figured online they were saying that it's reasonably better than the newer ones, but I have seen those white ones too.
Yeah.
They're like older, I think.
Yeah, totally. Just anecdotally, I heard this cool thing about that where like there's this famous like metalcore producer named Andy Sneap, I think is his name. I don't know if you've come across his name, but he's pretty popular like for like doing some like classic metalcore stuff. But his whole technique is using a 57 blended with a 421. And the reason that he did that on a Mesa cab, and the reason he did that was because he had heard that Bob Rock did that on like Metallica. And the thing is that Bob Rock used the old 421, which sounds really different. And the new 421, maybe not clean, but for distorted stuff, it has way more like upper mid going on, and it's like way more like with a like heavy, really heavy guitar sound. It's like way more metallic sounding.
Yeah.
So by accident, Sneap was trying to copy Bob Rock, and he ended up creating like the metalcore sound.
Oh, wow.
Because he was doing this technique, but he was doing it wrong because he was using the wrong mic. Whereas like those old white ones are way smoother sounding. They're like really flat sounding in kind of a nice way, but they don't really have like that any upper mid emphasis or high end emphasis. So yeah, it's kind of cool. It's like kind of I don't care about that like music or that guy, but I just like stuff like that where it's like by accident you kind of come up with like a new sound because you're like trying to copy somebody. It's kind of like we're talking about even with the Cap and Jazz thing,
I mean, yeah, no question. Like the modern metalcore stuff is definitely, the guitars are like it's not like classic metal tones. It's like even more.
Yeah, aggressive kind of. But yeah, I'm glad came out okay because I remember really struggling with it and just like to get it passable. But now I listen to it and I also think it sounds pretty cool. I probably put some compression on the guitars too. So,
Do you remember what the setup was for bass?
I think we probably at that time, Kevin never really had an amp he liked. I have a feeling we recorded it direct.
Okay. Use like an amp sim or something?
No, I just think it's probably just DI with compressor.
Oh, word.
Yeah, like old school style.
I was like, it's not too subby. It's like a lot of low mids. It's very present. It sits well in its pocket, I think. I was just curious.
That's probably why, because a lot of the best bass amps actually have like like an Ampeg like SVT. When it's set flat, it's flat. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that's making it like scooped is the speakers.
Right.
The 10, the classic 10s in a Ampeg cab are like really scooped. The voicing's really scooped. So I have a feeling that's just direct with like a shitload of compression on it and probably a little bit of EQ. I'll have to open up the file and I can look. Not right now because I have to get my old computer out, but
yeah, dude. I mean, if you come across those files, like not to be weird, but like I will pay you money for you to send me like a session just so I can check it out.
That's really funny. You'll be like, oh God, this doesn't really sound very good. I mean, the kind of, you know how it is with mixing, it's kind of the sum of its parts, you know, like I don't think anything sounds particularly good on those, but like so here, this is a good segue to the next thing we recorded, which is I didn't record.
Is that Naps?
Yes, that was the first mistake, because although my skills were never great, I had a vision in my head of what it should sound like, and I tried my best to get it there. And a lot of that even was like level stuff, like a lot of automation of levels. That I did that a lot, like with guitar parts, like, oh, I want this one just a little louder, like.
Yep.
That really careful balancing of things like that, and just having like a vision. So on Naps, I was getting tired of doing recordings, and we were having trouble like writing new material just because of like schedules and like, I don't know. So I had this friend David who like had recorded his own band Anne, and they had this EP that sounded like incredible. And so I was like, let's just get David to do it and mix it. Then we don't have to fucking worry about it. We'll just record it with him.
Right.
We got at least like 4 songs or 5, whatever. I think it's 4 songs. And he'll record it, and then he'll mix it. It'll be fine. So Buster recorded drums with him when I wasn't there, which was a mistake because I usually like have a whip and I'm like, Buster, do it again.
Yeah.
And because I don't think the performance is good, and I know Buster doesn't like it. And then I tracked the guitars and bass and vocals myself. I did do that part, but I didn't mix it. And we, a lot of people like those songs, and some people even like the mix, but I have a feeling if you like Snacks, you do not like Naps, because it just sounds fucking weird to me. And I had a lot of struggles talking to the mixing person, David, about like fixing it, you know? And he did try his best considering like the drum performance, but I just like this, like it's really harsh sounding and weird. It doesn't like feel like it sounds like us because I didn't mix it, you know? So I always regretted not mixing that one.
Yeah, I thought it sounded maybe a little less like open, like a little more, not compressed, but just a little more, I don't know, crowded or something.
Yeah, it is more compressed. Like the cymbals are like, I remember the first part of it's my fault though, because like, so for example, like the first mix he sent me had really like subdued cymbals, but the music had like no energy. And I was like, dude, we got to do something to like, can you like turn up the overheads and like make it kind of slam a little harder? Because it just feels like, just didn't feel like anything. It didn't feel like a rock band. It felt like really like depressing. So
right.
He like, you know, but see, if I had done it myself, I would have known exactly what I was talking about, right? So he was only just going off of me, like trying to like give this, and this is the problem when you don't mix your own music, right? So, or like have it mixed by somebody who knows your band really well. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge because you just never really know what the band wants exactly. So, you know, he gave me a few options and I listened to it over and over, and eventually I was like, it's fine. But I do kind of like, every time I hear it, I'm just like, ugh, it's not good. But it's the first time we ever did, the clean is on the neck pickup. It's the first time, only because I mentioned this before, it's the only time we ever did good distorted guitars on the bridge pickup.
Oh, wow. Was that his call?
It actually might have been. Because we never did that live. That actually might have been his idea. Even though I recorded them on my own, I do actually think that was his idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's a more conventional move, I would say.
Oh, yeah. And you probably know about this album that never came out.
Yeah, the Kickstarter.
Yeah. So so you may or may not know the full story with that. So what happened was, Kevin had moved back to New Mexico, so it was just me, Buster, and John in Portland still, and we weren't sure if we were gonna do any more music. The last 2 tours we did were European tours, just because they were like honestly easier to do. And like more cushy, to be honest. And the first one we did went really bad because Buster was having drug problems, and the second one was really good because like he was sober, and like we went with a better band and we had better gear. And the first one I had hurt my finger really bad. I had to go to the hospital and play the whole tour and like my finger basically falling off, and it was bad.
Oh wow!
But
was that your picking hand?
No,
or
my
your
fretting hand, my pinky, and I still can't really play with it very good. So actually, Snacks was after that. So if my guitar playing got worse on Snacks, that's why. But
wow.
But I yeah, now I'm playing in a death metal band, and it really fucking sucks. But so I honestly can't remember if we already had the music written. No, we hadn't. What happened was I was supposed to be living, this is kind of a tangent, but I was supposed to be living in Egypt, where I was going to study Arabic and learn to teach English, and like get certified to teach English so I could be over there for like 6 months. And then
was that your major?
No, I did do some like Middle Eastern studies. I think I thought at the time maybe I would get into like immigration law or something, because it was like during a high point of Islamophobia still and stuff, because of the Iraq War, and just like that was still ongoing and stuff. So I thought like, oh, that'd be a cool thing to do, because I'd taken like some like political science classes and stuff, and got into like doing Palestinian activism and stuff like that. But I don't know. I was just like, I want to study Arabic, and I'd already been to Egypt once before, and it was a pretty like chill place to go for as far as being the Middle East. And it's funny in retrospect, because I was like, should we go to Egypt or Syria? And we were like, Syria's too boring. And then look what happened in Syria. But
yeah, right.
It's crazy. It's crazy to even think that I had that thought. So I was like there, and then I think that was another reason like the band was slowing down a little bit. And then I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. And then I came back. Oh, no. Because I'd already been to Egypt once before. Oh, no, I was there, and then when I went, the Egyptian revolution happened. Oops. So I had to leave.
Jeez.
But I got stuck there during the revolution, which was insane. That's like a whole nother story. But when I came back, and that's when I started writing some like new riffs and whatever. But we had some songs maybe, or like we weren't sure what we were doing, and then...
This is with Kevin down in
New Mexico,
and
yeah.
you three up
and we were like, I think that's why we weren't practicing. I just had like some ideas. And then I think this is how it happened. And then Buster was saying, hey, we should like do another album, and you should like, we should record it ourselves because we had a bad time with the last one. And I was like, yeah, but my computer is like, my computer I had since like high school. I had a nice computer at the time. It was like an early Mac, but I got it in like 2003 or something. And it was like almost 10 years old or something. So I was like, my computer cannot like record anymore. So how would we even do it? We'd need a computer. And so Buster, with nobody's permission, made a Kickstarter, because Kickstarter was like a brand new thing. Made a Kickstarter for a Kidcrash to get a computer so we can record our new album, which hadn't been written yet. That was part of it. We had not written the album yet. I had riffs, but it was like Buster thought this would like help us. He did it, and we were mortified that he had done this, because we felt like these Kickstarters, they're supposed to be like for charity, philanthropic things, like people who need help. We don't need a fucking computer. That's what we said. Like, we'll just buy one. We'll figure it out. Like, if we need to record, we don't even have an album. So, but what happened was Buster was like, okay, guys, okay, just like, people are giving a lot of money though, and like, it's not just about that. It's like people really want us to make another album.
How did that feel? Was that surprising?
It felt good. That was the only thing that kept us doing it, because we were like, oh shit, we had like all these people being like, this fucking rules, I can't wait, like I'm so happy, like to give money to help you guys. And so he convinced us, and all the people were like, because we asked for like, I don't know, $2,000 for a computer. And then, I don't know, people gave us like more money than that. And we were like, holy crap. And so we're like, okay. So we just accepted it, and we started writing our album. And it took a while, and we wrote an entire album. It's like almost an hour long. And,
oh, wow.
And then with the money, we were like, well, we don't really need a computer. Like, we can just borrow a fucking computer. We don't need to then own a computer. So what we did with the money was we rented some equipment, because we didn't also, like, I didn't have like a proper interface and stuff. So we rented like a mobile recording rig from my friend who had a studio, and all these really nice microphones. Like, we got like Cole's ribbon microphones and like,
oh, nice,
tons of shit. And then we recorded it at Buster, this house. Buster was like house sitting for like a rich guy. So, because we knew that recording in a rich person's house worked out good for us before. Yeah. So we did it again, and we got our we got our friend who was a drum teacher to like hire to tune the drums, and like I was like, we're gonna dial this shit in. So we spent a bunch of money on like that aspect. You know, we had to buy some like cabling, and just like, you know, we bought some new cymbals to make sure, like, because, you know, we don't want to record with cracked cymbals and this and that. And like we recorded the drums, and they sounded amazing. Like my best recording, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then we recorded guitars, which took a long time, because we had to work out a bunch of the guitar parts like kind of after the fact. But we recorded the guitars. We used my my amps, and we used bridge pickup for the entire album. That was weird.
Right on.
That was something very different.
I guess that was a conscious choice.
It was
at that point.
Yes. And we used some different amps. I think we still use 57s on the speaker, but we recorded it. And then the problem was Kevin was not there for any of this, and he had no bass parts. We had recorded the entire album with no bass, no ideas for bass. Like, a lot of my guitar parts had bass parts in them, so it wasn't like, you know, so my parts are very rhythm heavy, I guess, because...
Yeah, a lot of roots in there.
Yes, they're in there, which is something we did anyways, so it wasn't that different really. But then we sent him the recording and was like, write bass lines for this entire album. And then he did, and he came up to Portland to record, but like it was kind of rushed, and we had like some technical difficulties with his old bass, and like we had to borrow a bass, and it didn't sound great. And, like a lot of his bass lines like didn't actually work because he didn't really know what we were playing. He was trying to do it by ear. So we had to rewrite a bunch of stuff, but we got it recorded. We ended up having to re-record some more of it later. And then we sent it to our friend. I didn't want to mix it again though, but I was like, I'm going to be way more careful this time. So I sent it to a friend, Jamie, who's a really talented engineer, to do like a rough mix for me to record vocals over. And he did, and it was sounding really good. And then I just never recorded vocals for it. That's what happened. So that's where it's still at. And I think that was like, I think we finished, it's been like kind of off and on, because it wasn't like he did that rough mix for me like right after we finished it. Like, it actually took a few years to like get the files in order to send to him, and also to like fix some of the bass. And I think we might have redone some of the guitar. And I did have trouble with like some of the sessions at one point, and like a bunch of bad shit happened in our lives like in between then. So like there was always kind of something where I got in the way. So I was like, oh, you know, I just need to do vocals. And I didn't have any vocals written. So it was like an hour long. I'm like, boy, this is really intimidating. So the more time passed, we just like never finished it. But I always tell people that we have every intention of finishing it as soon as we have time. So sadly, just recently, our friend Mike, who did all of our artwork, passed away just a couple weeks ago.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so
that's some of my favorite art, like ever.
Yeah, so sadly he passed away, and he did do art for us for this new one that I have.
Oh wow.
It's really fucking weird. I don't know if we can use it. It's really fucking weird, but we do have some art, and you know, him dying was like, it wasn't like, honestly, he wasn't a big fan of our band, but he was like a good friend of ours, you know, and he had been on tour with us, and like, it was kind of just like, God, we should really finish this. So actually just recently I've kind of like gotten some inspiration to finish it. But so what ended up happening was with the Kickstarter thing is we got in touch with everybody through their Kickstarter email or whatever, and we gave them their money back. So we didn't have to worry about it. Some people never emailed us back. Some people said, I don't care. Some people said whatever, because we, you know, and Buster felt responsible. So because he, you know, there was this pressure to do it that like we never really wanted. And I think that kind of messed the whole thing up. But like he paid like out of pocket, I think, to pay some people back. And yeah, if anyone hasn't been paid back, you can just email us and so we'll give you your money back. Because, but we're still with the intention of finishing it. We just didn't want to have that like on our shoulders anymore, kind of thing.
For sure.
So, and John was really upset about it. So he was like adamant that we paid people back, but no, but I don't, some people were more annoyed that we never like released the album. They didn't really care so much about like the money, you know, because I mean, maybe at first, but then so much time had passed. It's like, well, you know, what was there, $20 or whatever. So all the people that gave more money, I actually knew personally anyways. So, but
well, that's cool. They got their money back and a record on the way.
Yeah, right. Because and then the other aspect of giving people their money back was then we didn't have to worry about doing like the rewards or whatever.
Yeah, all the tiers and stuff.
Yeah, we could just like release the album.
That was like 2014, right?
It was a really long time ago, and it's like, yeah, I at this point I consider it 10 years ago. But the joke's always been like, oh, maybe like the music will come back by the time we release it.
Yeah.
But I'm really like, I feel bad because people like you who've like followed our band and have enough interest to like ask me about this stuff, like I know you would really like it.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's why I feel bad, because I'm like, it's literally like all the best parts of our band, and like Buster's drum performance is like really, really good. Like I think like the jokes level like good. Like he got like better at drums again right before we recorded, and he wouldn't be offended by me saying this because like he knows that his capabilities are solely based on his effort. Like, you know, when he practices, he's really good because he's just naturally great. But when he fucks off, he can't play anymore. So,
sure.
He was working really hard and we were practicing a lot. And so his drum performance is really good. And we tried to like incorporate aspects of like our entire kind of discography, like in the music. I know this is really rude to say because I have nothing to show you.
No, I mean it's really great to hear. I don't know if there's anything online about like the current status of that project, but I mean it's exciting as shit. Like I don't think you guys have a bad song.
Oh, thanks.
And I know it's gonna be great. So
oh, thanks. I just for people who like us, I'm like they're gonna like it. It's not like we took a weird left turn or something, with it. Yeah. We just like tried to do what we were doing, but like kind of the next like evolution of it, which isn't like we didn't, no effects pedals, don't worry. Like we didn't do anything crazy, but so I'm like, I think that's been another pressure to finish it. Cause I'm like, I am really proud of it. And I just like want to make sure it's good, but it's It's just the vocals were really intimidating to do, and so it was like a roadblock, and then you know, all this life stuff got in the way, so it was like easy to put it off, you know.
For sure, yeah.
You know, because it's not like we're ever gonna play again, and we don't even know how to play the songs. Like if I'm writing vocals for it, it's not like I can even play along. I don't even know how to play the songs. Like I remember like a couple riffs or something, and the whole thing's in Dadgad.
Nice.
I don't know. We just picked Dadgad, but I figured out how to play in like 3 different keys in Dadgad, so it doesn't all sound exactly the same.
Right on. It's not like all A or D. Not that that's a bad thing.
Right.
I mean, I feel like all of Snacks was either like A or D.
That would make sense.
That's awesome, man. I'm really hyped to hear that. And yeah, I know, like, I mean, as you get older, I feel like that kind of stuff just gets harder and harder to do.
It does. The irony is we started the band so young, and we always thought, I remember us talking about it, like, when we're older, it's going to be so easy.
Yeah.
Because we don't have, like, parents, and we'll, like, have our own money, and we'll, like, be able to do whatever we want. Because that's how young we started. We, like, couldn't make our own choices, you know? So it was like, yeah, of course. That's literally the definition of naive.
I just wanted to ask about Science. It sounds like it's going really well. Are you looking to just keep it up for as long as you can?
Yeah, it's been my like actual job for like 12 years.
Right on.
So, and I made it work, and as I've gotten more established over the years, my rent's gone up too, so it's kind of worked out. But at the beginning, you know, it was like very humble, and you know, I really have Kidcrash to thank for getting going, because I've seen a lot of people try to start music electronic businesses, like whether it's amps or guitars or pedals, and people are talented and they love music, but they like don't have any connections with musicians.
Right.
And some people get lucky, right? They make a pedal that like looks so cool, people just buy it, or like whatever, a band uses it or something like that. But you know, when I first got started, the first people that bought amps from me were people that I knew personally, friends, and people that liked Kidcrash. So they took kind of a chance, you know, and like helped me get going. And so I really like appreciate that aspect of it, because it's been able to make it my job. So yeah, I just work from a home shop, and I work with a cabinet builder down in Olympia, whose uncle I apprenticed for way back when. And when I got out of college, because in college I studied literary criticism and political science and like liberal arts shit, you know.
Yeah. It was a apprenticeship for electronics?
Yeah, from another amp builder, this older guy. But it wasn't very long, but he helped me like get going, you know. And so, yeah, I've just been doing amp design and stuff, and building amps, for forever now. But I just do it from home, and I still like talk to people that like know about Kidcrash and stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, you contacted me about like talking about all this, you know, the history of it and like the recording and stuff, and that like kind of surprises me. But we did like tour so much, and I know I know how it is, because like I found the most obscure bands. Like if someone like, I'm just picking the most random band, but like if someone in the band Ordination of Aaron, okay, the really old, really, really obscure emo band, knew that I was mentioning them like on a podcast in 2022, they would fucking be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But I know who Ordination of Aaron is. Like, I'm sorry, but I know who they are. So I'm not surprised that people still find Kidcrash these days. Like, it's always really cool, because I just never thought like our music would spread. Like I don't know, it's just like a cool thing about like DIY and like the punk thing. It's like so much word of mouth and stuff.
Yeah, I was like a Midwest emo kid for a while. My old scene in South Jersey, we kind of had that thing going, kind of going off the the tales of like Into It Over It and Algernon and stuff.
Oh yeah.
We're doing a lot of that kind of mathy emo type stuff, and Kidcrash was like some of the. I had a very delicate entrance into screamo because like the vocalist can like make or break it.
Yeah, the East Coast thing is kind of like going back to rap. It's like sometimes the East Coast like incarnation of it is like kind of annoying. I don't know. The singers like annoyed me too. Like I'd never liked Orchid, for example. I just found it obnoxious. Like, even though I love Will Killingsworth and some of his later bands, and it's not the music. It's just like the singer I just found obnoxious. And like certain bands, like there's a famous one that I think's from New Jersey, where it always sounded like the guy's like crying. We used to make fun of him a lot.
I think Seisha's from Philly.
This was like a Seisha-ish band. This was like a newer band I'm thinking of. But like, yeah, I totally know what you're saying. So it's kind of like I hated more bands like that than I liked. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really picky about it. But, and I was like a band kid growing up. Like it was all instruments. I sang in choir, but like I was never really a vocal.
Cool. Yeah.
I was never really like a lyrics guy, but like, I found you guys, and it was like the instrumentation was engaging, and the vocals were not obnoxious, and the lyrics were good. I'm just like, I'm sold.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I do, like, you may have noticed this, but like a lot of bands from like our time would scream over quiet parts or yell over quiet sections, and I always found that like really distasteful.
Yeah.
So there's like I think one part which is a joke part, but there's like one part where we sing over a quiet part and it's like distant sounding, but like it was never I every time I heard a band like where they're screaming over like a little twinkly guitar part, I just like had to turn it off. So I'm glad that you liked that about our band because that was really intentional.
Was that the last or second to last track on Jokes?
There's one, yeah, where we sing this thing in Spanish that our
cool
friends from Mexico. It's like literally I don't even think it's in the lyrics. It might be in the lyrics. I won't spoil it. You'll have to figure it out. But yeah, and then lyrics and stuff. I was in school for like I was like studying like really obscure weird poetry and stuff. So like I definitely I was definitely like into like words, and I definitely was like on some shit about poetry at the time when I was writing lyrics for Kidcrash, especially for Jokes and Snacks. So
yeah,
it's funny because I've never met them, but I guess someone from Into It Over It is like really into New Ruins. They told me, they were like, I love your vocals. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't.
I don't believe it.
I was like, you don't? Okay, you really don't. And like, they're a way better singer than me anyways. But I was like, you don't, trust me. But like, yeah, someone told me that they were like, they somehow found New Ruins and they like that. So I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, I actually, one of my old short-lived projects in Jersey, we won this Instagram contest for we got to record a free song at this dude's studio. His name was Adam. His last name starts with a C or something, I forget. But he does a lot of like pop punk and stuff up in North Jersey. And we were just talking to him about like music and stuff, and he brings up Kidcrash, and I'm like,
crazy
dog, are you serious right now? And he drops New Ruins. He's like, that's the shit, man. I'm like, out of all the releases, that's the one you pick. Okay.
That's some Jersey shit right there. No, I don't know. There is like a lot of like poppy stuff like that from New Jersey. So I'm like, that doesn't surprise me. And you know what? We never played in New Jersey ever. So it's not like,
really?
Yeah, I don't know. We just never had a connection there. So it's not like when we were in our other like era, we ever played there for anyone to find out about us. So if someone knows about us, it's totally random. And so,
did you ever play Philly?
Yes. We used to play with this band, or we knew this band Towers, who was, and this band Peter and Craig, and then Peter's.
Yeah, that's
They were called D'Amore before that, but Peter is the singer of Algernon.
Algernon. Yeah.
Yeah, they just borrowed an amp, not one of my amps I had. I rented them Twin Reverb I have for their tour they just went on.
Nice. Yeah, I saw them twice on that tour.
Cool.
They were great.
Yeah, so that Twin Reverb that the guy was playing on, that was it's right here now.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I remember also I was listening to a podcast and it was an interview with all the members of Snowing.
Oh, yeah, I remember them. They had another band before that was like we had played with. I can't remember the name, but yeah.
Yeah, the one guy, I think Nate, the guitarist, was they were talking about, I guess, playing back in the day, and they played with you guys, and he was just gushing about like how awesome Kidcrash was, and how he
sweet.
like every couple of years he'll like take mushrooms and listen to jokes.
That's cool, dude. We definitely did a lot of mushrooms in high school, so I'm glad that's coming across.
Right on.
Maybe that's my thing. I need to take mushrooms so I can finish the Kidcrash album.
Yes, that's the secret.
All right. Shit, I'm too scared. It's been too long.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I need, man, to really break through that wall. But
Get in the zone. Yeah. I mean, I'm just happy that it's in the stars, that you guys haven't sworn it off.
No, not at all. Never have. That's the thing. I never have. That's why I never feel too guilty about it. I think about it every day. It's like a specter. But yeah, we can keep talking after this, but I'll for the podcast, the official 4-hour long podcast, I will say thank you very much for having me. It's been really fun to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you again so much. This has been a dream come true.
Oh, that's really sweet. I'm really happy to hear that. It was really my pleasure. It really was.
Awesome, man. All right, take care, Alec.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.